I always thought I had life figured out. Hard work, a beautiful family, a comfortable home, and a good neighborhood. It was everything I'd ever wanted. My name is Mark, and up until a few months ago, I believed I was a happily married man. I wore my wedding ring with pride. Every morning I'd wake up at 5:30 in our spacious suburban house, lace up my running shoes, and go for a jog before heading to the office. I'm a senior manager at a tech firm, and my wife, Lauren, is a marketing director for a pharmaceutical company. Together we enjoyed all the trappings of an upper-middle-class life. Weekend brunches with friends, vacations abroad, and our 7-year-old son, Ethan, who was the light of our lives. From the outside, we must have looked like the perfect couple. Sometimes I even felt like we were high school sweethearts who beat the odds, still together after nearly 10 years of marriage. We'd met in college, and I fell for her quick wit and easy laugh before I even realized what was happening. When I proposed to Lauren on a snowy New Year's Eve, she cried and said it was a fairy tale. In many ways, it was. Two kids from ordinary backgrounds building an extraordinary life together. Even as my career demanded long hours and frequent travel, I trusted we were solid. We had our date nights, inside jokes, and whispered plans for the future. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd soon be plotting the downfall of the person I loved most, I would have laughed in your face. For years, I was the guy who believed I'd hit the marriage jackpot. I trusted Lauren completely. I adored how she volunteered at Ethan's school on her days off, how she'd curl up next to me on the couch with her head on my shoulder, matching her breath to mine. When my father passed away 2 years ago, she held me through the night while I cried, a rare show of vulnerability for me. And I remember thinking, whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together. I was proud of what we had. I would have staked my life on her fidelity, on our mutual respect. That's why the shock cut so deep when it came. But life has a way of blindsiding you. In hindsight, the cracks were there, hairline fractures beneath a polished surface. It started with small changes. Lauren began staying late at work more often. Something about gearing up for a big product launch. Initially, I didn't think much of it. After all, I often had late meetings too. We were a modern dual-career couple. Overtime and business dinners came with the territory. We'd trade quick texts on those nights. "Don't wait up," she'd write with an apologetic emoji. I'd respond with a thumbs up and a heart, warming up leftover pasta for myself and making sure Ethan did his homework. It was normal, or so I told myself. Over the next few weeks, however, there were other signs I couldn't ignore. One night, around 11 p.m., I was half asleep in bed when I heard Lauren's phone buzz on her nightstand. Normally, she had it on Do Not Disturb, but she must have forgotten. The sound was followed by a delicate rustle of sheets as she quickly turned over and grabbed the phone. I opened my eyes groggily to see the screen's glow on her face. Her expression, that slight upturn at the corner of her mouth, wasn't something I usually saw at that hour. "Everything okay?" I murmured, my voice thick with sleep. She nearly jumped. "Yeah," she whispered. Her fingertips tapped out a quick reply before I could fully wake. "Sorry. Didn't mean to wake you. That was just Monica, from work. You remember Monica, right? She was asking me something about a project due tomorrow." I mumbled an okay and rolled over. In the moment, it sounded plausible enough. But a tiny barb of suspicion pricked at me. Monica was a colleague of hers, and we'd met at a holiday party once. Would she really text that late about work? And was that a heart emoji I saw at the end of the preview before Lauren hid the screen? I told myself I might have imagined that. Half-asleep minds play tricks. Still, something about the way Lauren snatched her phone felt off. The next day, that nagging feeling lingered. At lunch, I found myself scrolling through Facebook on my office computer, and I clicked on Monica's profile purely out of idle curiosity, I told myself. Her recent posts were generic, nothing incriminating. But then I noticed something. Monica was on vacation in Italy that week, something Lauren had even mentioned to me. She wasn't even in the country to be texting about work. My stomach sank as I stared at a photo of Monica at the Colosseum posted yesterday. Lauren had lied straight to my face. I shut my laptop, heart thumping in my ears. There had to be an explanation, right? Maybe Lauren just panicked from being startled awake and came up with an excuse. Perhaps it really was some girlfriend texting late about personal stuff, and she just said Monica to avoid my jealousy. We'd had minor spats in the past about one of her single girlfriends who texted at odd hours. I tended to be protective. That's it, I tried to convince myself. She was just avoiding a fight. But deep down, the seed was planted. Once sown, suspicion has a way of growing like a weed, spreading roots into every otherwise normal moment. Over the following days, I started noticing everything. When Lauren got home from work, she was glued to her phone, her manicured fingers dancing out messages with a faint smile on her lips. If I walked into the room, she'd abruptly lock the screen and shove the phone into her purse or pocket, her smile vanishing. We were spending less time together in the evenings, too. She claimed exhaustion and fell asleep early, or feigned a headache when I initiated intimacy. Our once weekly tradition of curling up on the couch to watch Netflix fell by the wayside. In its place were vague comments. "Oh, sorry, hun. I have to catch up on some emails." Or, "I promised my team I'd review a presentation tonight." One Friday, she was late to Ethan's school play. Very late. The second graders were well into their song by the time she slipped into the auditorium, breathless and flushed. After the performance, Ethan ran up to us, and I did my best to mask my annoyance for his sake. "Mommy, you missed my first lines," he pouted. "I'm so sorry, sweetie," Lauren said, kneeling to hug him. "Work ran late, and then traffic was awful." Her face was red, and not just from rushing. I recognized the look of guilt in her eyes, even as she smothered our son with kisses. When we got home, I gently pressed her. "What happened? You've never been that late to an event for Ethan." I kept my tone careful, aiming for concern over accusation. She sighed and busied herself by the kitchen counter, tidying random mail that had piled up. "I know, I'm sorry. My meeting with a client ran way over. Then I couldn't find parking." "Which client?" I asked. "Maybe I know them." Our industries often overlapped, and we occasionally bumped into each other's colleagues at networking events. I stepped closer, watching her back stiffen at my question. It's nobody you'd know," she replied too quickly. "Just a new account my team is handling." Still not turning to face me, she began arranging the mail by size, a thing she only did when she was nervous. A heavy silence hung between us. I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled and said, "All right, I understand busy days happen." I leaned in and kissed the top of her head. She finally met my eyes, looking relieved. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The scent of her shampoo wafted from her pillow, but instead of comforting me, it felt alien. I replayed the evening in my mind, her flustered entrance, the way she deflected my questions. The fact that she never actually named the mysterious client. Was I just being paranoid? I reminded myself that trust is the foundation of any marriage, so I tried to put it out of my mind. I wrapped an arm around her sleeping form and told myself whatever was bothering her, we'd get through it. That maybe she really was just stressed from work. I nearly succeeded in convincing myself, until I found the receipt. It was the following week, when I was tossing a load of laundry into the wash, that I discovered it. A crumpled receipt in the pocket of one of Lauren's blouses. I absent-mindedly smoothed the wrinkled paper, expecting it to be from a grocery run or the dry cleaners. Instead, the printed header read, Lumiere Bistro, the upscale French restaurant downtown with $30 appetizers. We hadn't been there together in over a year. My pulse quickened as my eyes raced to the date. It was last Friday, the night of Ethan's school play. The timestamp, 6:48 p.m. My hand started to shake. At 6:48 last Friday, Lauren was supposedly stuck in a meeting, then crawling through rush-hour traffic. The receipt listed 2 entrees and 2 glasses of Merlot. Dinner for 2. I felt the room tilt as a wave of nausea swept through me. The paper fluttered from my hand to the floor. For a long moment, I just stood there in the laundry room, the washing machine humming obliviously. When I finally picked up the receipt again, a dull roar of rage was beginning to drown out my denial. This was tangible, printed proof that my wife had lied and that she was with someone else. I wanted to march up to our bedroom and confront her that very second. She was home, lounging in bed with her iPad, probably thinking I was just doing chores like a good husband. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. It took every ounce of willpower not to storm upstairs, waving that damned receipt and demanding answers. A vision flashed before me. Me shouting, her crying, a bitter fight waking our child, and in the end, more lies or half-confessions that wouldn't undo what was done. If I confronted her now, would she even tell me the truth? Or would she gaslight me, downplay it as just a business dinner that she hadn't mentioned? My gut told me the truth was darker, and that if I wanted real answers and real justice, I'd have to keep my cool. I forced myself to breathe slowly, in and out, until the tremor in my hands subsided. Instead of confronting Lauren that night, I hid the receipt in my desk drawer, a silent promise to myself. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Who was she seeing? How long had this been going on? And why? The questions swirled in my mind, each one fueling my anger and pain. Over the next few days, I continued as the picture-perfect husband, but it was like I was on autopilot. Inside, I was burning. When Lauren cheerfully mentioned she had a work dinner on Wednesday night with some visiting executives, I barely managed to smile and say, "Sure, have a great time." She had no clue that I already knew her secret. That night, I tucked Ethan in at his bedtime, then called up my mother-in-law and asked if she could watch him overnight on Friday. I lied that I was planning a romantic surprise weekend for Lauren out of town, and I needed her to take Ethan for a sleepover. It was the exact opposite of romance that I was planning, but at least I didn't have to worry about him witnessing anything traumatic. Friday morning over breakfast, I casually mentioned to Lauren that I'd have to head to Chicago overnight for a sudden client meeting. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Friday was supposed to be her day off. A teacher in service day for Ethan meant she'd taken a personal day to be with him. "Oh," she said, "that's too bad. When do you leave?" "This afternoon," I lied smoothly. "I'll probably be back late tomorrow. But hey, maybe you and Ethan can have a fun movie night." She smiled, looking oddly relieved. "Yeah, we'll do that. Don't worry about us, we'll be fine." I bet you will, I thought bitterly. I hated the deceit pouring from my own mouth, but it was necessary. If my wife was now living a lie, then for a short while I would too. That afternoon I left the office early and swung by our house to pack an overnight bag, a prop for my alibi. Lauren and Ethan were out at the park, so I didn't have to explain myself much. I gave my son a big hug at my in-laws' drop-off and whispered that I loved him, trying not to let the anger show in my eyes. By 6 p.m., I was camped out in my car down the street from our house, a safe distance where I could see our driveway. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear my pulse. I waited and waited until finally, just after 7, I saw Lauren's silver Lexus back out of the garage. She was alone. I tailed her from a far enough distance, terrified of losing her but equally terrified of being noticed. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. She drove across town, and I realized with a fresh stab of pain that I knew exactly where she was heading: the Lumiere Bistro. Sure enough, she turned into the same parking lot of the French restaurant where that receipt had come from. I parked on the street just in time to watch her step out of her car, dressed to kill in a little black dress and stilettos I hadn't seen before. She smoothed her hair, the way she does when she's anxious or excited. A moment later, another car pulled up alongside hers. I recognized the navy BMW immediately. It belonged to Eric, a guy who until this second I would have still called my friend. Eric and his wife Michelle lived just a few blocks from us and were part of our regular social circle. We'd vacationed together with our families and celebrated countless milestones side by side. Birthdays, New Year's parties, summer barbecues. We trusted each other with our kids and our secrets. I had even helped him get a job at my company 2 years ago, taking him under my wing. There was a time I trusted him implicitly. As I watched him stroll over to my wife, that trust shattered completely. He grinned as he approached her, and she lit up like a teenager, a huge smile breaking across her face. My stomach churned. Of course it was Eric. The signs were there if I dared to see them. The way he and Lauren chatted a bit too closely at neighborhood barbecues, how they laughed at inside jokes during our group game nights. I had stupidly chalked it up to them just being good friends. After all, Michelle and Lauren were also close. We often had couples nights together, the betrayal cut twice as deep. My wife and my friend. They didn't go into the restaurant. Eric leaned in and greeted Lauren with a hand on her waist and a kiss on her cheek that lingered just a second too long. I could see her beaming at him under the glow of a street lamp, her body language shy and flirty in a way I hadn't seen in years. Jealousy and fury dueled inside me, nearly propelling me out of the car to knock him flat. Instead, I raised my phone and snapped a few photos, my hand shaking. They walked arm in arm into the lobby of the boutique hotel attached to the bistro. It was one of those chic, intimate places where no one would bat an eye at two lovers slipping away for a night. As soon as they disappeared through the glass doors, I sagged back in the driver's seat. For a moment, everything blurred. I realized it was because my eyes were filled with tears. I don't know whether it was heartbreak, rage, or both. Probably both. I sat there in that darkened street, teeth clenched, hands clamped white knuckle on the wheel, and let out a sound that was somewhere between a sob and a roar. I had seen enough. More than enough. My wife, the woman I devoted a decade to, was in a hotel with another man, a man who had shared beers with me while we watched football, a man who had sat at my dinner table. It took a long time for me to compose myself enough to drive. Eventually, the tears dried, leaving something else in their wake. A cold, clear resolve. The raw pain hardened into a steely focus. I wasn't going to confront them in some screaming, impulsive scene. No. I was going to make them pay, both of them, in a way they would never forget. On the drive home that night, my mind raced through possible scenarios. I could have confronted them then and there at the hotel, or just filed for divorce quietly and cut them out of my life. But something in me demanded a more fitting justice. They had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed, and I wanted the exposure of their betrayal to be as stark and searing for them as the discovery had been for me. They would not get to slip away and carry on their affair without repercussions. If they had turned my world upside down, I would return the favor. The days that followed were a blur of careful preparation. I barely slept at all, running on adrenaline, coffee, and sheer determination. By Monday morning, I had quietly contacted a tough-as-nails divorce attorney, one of the best in the city. Sitting in her sleek downtown office, I laid out everything: our years together, our son, and the evidence of Lauren's affair. The photos I'd taken, the receipt, the late-night texts. I half expected some judgment from the attorney, but she'd seen it all before. She listened intently, then outlined my options. In our state, adultery could be grounds for an at-fault divorce, potentially affecting alimony and even custody if I played it right. We discussed the assets, the house, finances, Ethan's schedule, all the grim logistics of unraveling a life. It was surreal initiating the end of my marriage like a business transaction, but I felt oddly calm doing it. Perhaps because in my mind, the marriage was already dead. I took pains to keep Lauren unaware of the storm gathering inside me. Each morning I still kissed her cheek before heading to work. Each evening I inquired about her day, and even managed to smile at her small talk. Sleeping next to her those nights was an exercise in emotional endurance. I lay stiffly in bed, listening to her breathe, flinching if she rolled over to drape an arm across me. I would stare at the ceiling in the darkness, seething silently at her proximity, yet forcing myself to act normal. I doubt she noticed the tension in my body. If she did, she might have chalked it up to my own work stress. More than once I had to bite my tongue in the middle of casual conversations, resisting the urge to explode and ask her why, or to tell her I knew everything. But I kept the mask firmly in place. Meanwhile, I gathered every shred of incriminating information I could. I dug through credit card statements and found charges for a couple of boutique hotel stays billed. During nights I remembered her working late. I quietly copied every suspicious detail and handed it to my lawyer. I also asked a tech-savvy colleague to discreetly pull phone logs from the company phone I paid for, confirming dozens of lengthy calls and texts to Eric's number, often at odd hours. Every discovery felt like a knife twist, but I steeled myself with the purpose of it all. One thing I knew: simply catching them wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel the consequences. So I planned a little surprise. Ironically, we had a small dinner party already arranged for the following Saturday with Eric and Michelle. It was a casual tradition for our two families to rotate hosting dinners, and this month it was our turn. A week ago, I would have considered canceling after what I discovered, but now I saw it as the perfect stage. I confirmed the plans with an enthusiastic group text. "Looking forward to having you over. Steaks on the grill." Lauren looked a bit startled when I cheerfully mentioned the dinner was still on. I could almost see the gears turning in her mind. She might have felt awkward facing Michelle, but she said nothing. Maybe she didn't want to arouse my suspicion by objecting. When Saturday came, I was ready. The backyard was decorated with string lights, the table set for 4, and a Bluetooth speaker played soft jazz to set a normal, relaxed mood. A gentle summer breeze wafted through the yard under a pink twilight sky, idyllic and calm, completely at odds with the turmoil roiling inside me. I marinated steaks and chopped vegetables for grilling as if everything were fine. In truth, I was running on adrenaline. The divorce papers were already drawn up and sat in a manila envelope in my study, alongside a second envelope containing prints of the photos I'd taken of Lauren and Eric at the hotel. Copies of everything, of course. The originals were in a safe place. In my mind, I felt like I was arranging a chessboard, every piece set in position for the final move. If all went according to plan, tonight I'd drop my facade and put them in checkmate. Eric and Michelle arrived just after 6 p.m. I greeted them at the door with a broad smile and a firm handshake for him, a warm hug for her. "Come on in. Make yourselves at home," I said brightly. If they noticed the slight tremor in my hand or the edge in my voice, they didn't show it. Lauren poured wine for everyone, perhaps to steady her own nerves. I watched her closely. She was a little too chatty, laughing a bit too hard at small jokes. Eric kept fiddling with his watch and avoiding direct eye contact with me. They were on edge, both of them. Good, I thought. They should be. Dinner itself was a masterclass in polite tension. We sat around the patio table, candles flickering between us. I made a show of clinking my glass to toast our good friends and wonderful spouses. I saw Lauren's cheeks flush as she gulped her Chardonnay. Eric coughed and forced a grin. Michelle, oblivious to the undercurrent, complimented the food. My heart panged when I looked at Michelle. She was the only innocent party besides Ethan, and she had no idea her world was about to implode too. Part of me felt a stab of guilt for what she was about to endure. But I reasoned she deserved the truth as well, no matter how painful. As the meal wound down, I sensed it was time. My pulse quickened, but I kept my demeanor steady. I cleared my throat. "There's actually something I'd like to say," I announced, placing my napkin down. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me. Lauren's wineglass was trembling in her hand. Eric shifted in his seat. "Mark?" Lauren asked, her voice tight with anxiety. She must have felt the storm gathering. I stood up slowly and fixed my gaze on my wife. "Lauren, you and I have been together for 10 years. We've shared a home, a family, a life. I thought nothing could ever come between us." My tone was calm, but inside my chest my heart was hammering. I turned my eyes to Eric, whose face was already draining of color. "I considered you one of my best friends, Eric. You were like a brother to me. We've trusted you and Michelle with our lives, with our son." I saw Michelle frown in confusion, sensing that something was very wrong. Eric opened his mouth, an instinctive smile as if to diffuse the situation. "Mate, what's this about?" I cut him off, my voice sharpening. Don't you dare pretend." I reached behind me to the side table where I'd placed the manila envelope, and I dropped it in the center of the table next to the empty wine bottle. A few glossy photographs slid out, face up, illuminated by the golden patio light. In the images, Lauren and Eric stood arm in arm by the hotel's front desk, unmistakable. Another showed them kissing in the parking lot beside her car. They were clear as day. For a moment, there was dead silence except for the soft strains of jazz playing in the background. Michelle was the first to react. She set down her fork with a clatter and reached for the photos with a shaking hand. What is this?" she whispered, although the answer was right there in her trembling fingers. Lauren let out a strangled gasp. Her face had gone pale as ash. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, rising halfway from her chair as if to come to me. "Explain?" I echoed with a bitter laugh, stepping back out of her reach. I could feel the mask of civility slipping from my face, revealing months of hurt and anger. "Please do explain how my wife and my supposed friend have been sneaking behind our backs. Explain how you lied to me, to your own husband, Eric, and to your best friend, Michelle." My voice was trembling with barely controlled fury now. Eric held up his hands in a placating gesture. Listen, Mark, I'm so sorry. We never meant. Michelle suddenly rounded on him, eyes flashing. Is this true? She hissed, holding up one photo like it was poison. You're having an affair with Lauren? Her voice cracked. I saw tears welling in her eyes. Eric's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. He looked pathetic, caught and cornered. Lauren was openly sobbing now. I'm sorry, she cried, mascara streaking. It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you. She reached a hand toward Michelle, who recoiled like a snake was lunging at her. I felt a surge of grim satisfaction mingled with disgust. Didn't mean to hurt us? You didn't think about us at all, I snapped. My hands balled into fists at my sides, while you were rolling around in hotel beds. Did you ever once consider your husband or your wife? Or our child? My voice broke on the last word. Lauren collapsed back into her chair, face in her hands, sobbing harder. Michelle stood abruptly, throwing the photos down as if they burned her. She looked at me, her expression a mix of anguish and sympathy, and then at her husband. How could you, Eric? She choked out. With her? With our friend? In our own town while I... She couldn't finish. With a wrenching sob, she turned and bolted out of the patio toward the house, covering her mouth. Michelle, wait! Eric blurted, finally finding his voice. He shot me a desperate look. I'll go talk to her. He moved as if to follow his wife. You're not going anywhere yet, I said, stepping into his path. All the years of friendship were gone from my eyes as I glared at him. I was bigger than Eric, and in that moment he knew better than to test me. He stopped in his tracks, shoulders slumped. I felt deadly calm as I spoke next. You have no idea what you've done, both of you, but you're about to find out. Eric, consider this the end of not only our friendship, but your career at my company. His eyes widened. Mark, please don't do that. I need that job. Should have thought of that before sleeping with the boss's wife, I snarled quietly. I'll be informing HR first thing Monday of your ethical violations. Or you can save us all time and hand in your resignation. Frankly, I don't care which. He stared at me, speechless. I could see in his face the realization that his comfortable life was crumbling. His marriage, his job, everything. Good, I thought. Let it crumble. Behind him, through the open patio door, I could hear Michelle's sobs echoing in our foyer. Lauren rose unsteadily to her feet. Mark, she begged, her voice raw, please, can we just talk? Just us? I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, for Ethan's sake, can we try to work this out? I love you. I never stopped loving you. She was babbling, desperate. I looked at the woman I had once planned to grow old with, and in that moment I felt nothing but hollow contempt. You love me? Was that before or after you slept with my friend? I asked coldly. She flinched as if slapped. Work this out? There's nothing to work out, Lauren. You blew up our life. Did you really think we'd have a happy family breakfast after this? Pretend nothing happened? She shook her head frantically, tears flying. No, I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. It didn't mean anything. It was a stupid fling. Didn't mean anything? I echoed, anger surging again. Missing our son's play for a fling? Risking everything for nothing? Do you even hear yourself? My voice cracked, and I took a step back, trying to rein in the tide of emotion. I felt on the verge of either smashing something or breaking down, maybe both. Eric used that moment to slip past toward the house, mumbling, I need to get Michelle. I let him go. He scurried inside to retrieve his devastated wife, and a minute later, I heard the front door slam as they left. Good riddance. Lauren reached out toward me, but I held up a hand, stopping her in her tracks. Don't! Don't you dare touch me! The venom in my tone was ice cold. She dropped her arms, shoulders shaking. In the heavy silence that followed, the reality of what comes next settled in the air. My voice when I spoke was quiet, resolute. I've already contacted a lawyer. I nodded toward the second envelope on the table. The divorce papers. We're done, Lauren. I'll be filing for divorce immediately. You'll be hearing from my attorney. I expect you to cooperate and make this as painless for Ethan as possible. If you try to fight me on custody or the settlement, well, I have plenty of evidence to bury you in court. And you know it. She stared at the envelope, then back at me in horror. You planned all this, she whispered. You bet I did, I replied, unflinching. Did you think I'd let you get away with it? That I'd slink off quietly while you two pranced around making a fool of me? Not a chance. For a moment, she simply stood there, face crumpled in misery. Mark, I know I have no right to ask, but please, can't we talk about this later? Just us? Please, I'm so sorry. I had imagined this moment so many times, envisioned myself shouting or throwing her out with her bags. But now that it was here, I felt an eerie stillness. There's nothing left to talk about, I said wearily. I nodded toward the house. Go pack a bag and leave. Tonight. You can stay at your parents' or wherever, I don't care. But I don't want you here when Ethan comes home tomorrow. I'll explain something to him. We'll figure it out. For now, I need you gone. She opened her mouth as if to protest, then closed it. The fight drained out of her. I think she finally realized that this was truly the end. With a broken sob, she turned and walked slowly into the house, wiping her eyes. I stood there on the patio alone, the candles flickering around the wreckage of our dinner. I listened as her footsteps went upstairs and a few minutes later came back down. She had a duffel bag. She must have thrown together some clothes. Lauren paused at the back door, her eyes swollen and pleading. Tell Ethan I'm sorry, she whispered. I couldn't even look at her. I turned away, jaw tight. After a long moment, I heard the door open and shut softly. She was gone. The hours after Lauren left were eerily quiet. I sat alone among the remnants of dinner-cold steak, half-empty wine glasses, and those damning photographs scattered across the table. I felt hollow, exhausted down to my bones. The adrenaline had faded, and now there was just the heavy ache of betrayal and an empty house. At some point I moved inside, leaving the mess outside for the morning. I collapsed on the couch, head in my hands, and let out a long, shuddering breath. It was over. My marriage was truly over. I didn't sleep much that night. How could I? My mind replayed every moment of the confrontation on a loop. Lauren's tear-streaked face, Eric's look of horror, Michelle's devastated sob. In the darkest hours, I'll admit, I questioned myself. Had I been too cruel, doing it that way? But every time doubt crept in, I remembered finding that receipt, remembered watching my wife embrace another man, remembered the lies and the deceit. No, they had brought this on themselves. The truth needed to come out, and they needed to face the fallout. Still, I felt a pang of sympathy for Michelle and even for Ethan, whose lives were collateral damage in this mess. They didn't deserve any of it. The next day, I had to face the reality of explaining things to my son. I picked Ethan up from my mother-in-law's as scheduled. She eyed me curiously, perhaps sensing tension, but I just thanked her and took him home. On the drive back, Ethan chattered about the fun he'd had at Grandma's. I forced a smile, answering as normally as I could. My heart clenched, knowing what I had to tell him. I waited until we were inside, and he noticed his mom wasn't home. "Is Mommy still at Grandma's?" he asked innocently. That question nearly broke me. I knelt down to look him in the eye. "Buddy, Mommy's not home right now," I said gently. "She's going to stay at Grandma and Grandpa's for a while, okay?" His little face scrunched up in confusion. "Why? Did she do something bad?" Kids have a way of cutting right to the core. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Mom and Dad had a big disagreement, and we need some time apart," I managed. "But we both love you so, so much. That will never change. None of this is your fault." He seemed to accept that for the moment, though I knew harder questions would come later. I distracted him by suggesting we go get ice cream, and that lit him up. As I drove us to the local ice cream parlor, listening to him excitedly debate chocolate versus rainbow sprinkles, I felt a swell of determination. I'd do whatever it took to make sure this sweet boy grew up okay, despite what happened. That night, long after the sugar rush of ice cream faded, I heard Ethan sniffle in his sleep, softly calling out for his mom. My heart cracked all over again. I went into his room and gently pulled him into my arms, whispering that everything was all right until he settled. As I held him, watching his small chest rise and fall, I felt a white-hot anger and sorrow intertwine inside me. Lauren should have been here for him, for us. But instead, she was the cause of his tears. In that moment, I knew I could never truly forgive her for that. In the following days, the dominoes continued to fall. True to my word, I had Eric's resignation on my desk by Monday afternoon. He didn't even face me. HR relayed that he opted to quit for personal reasons. Good. I heard through mutual contacts that Michelle had kicked him out of their house and filed for divorce immediately. I wasn't surprised. I made no effort to keep the affair secret. I didn't have to, as news seemed to spread on its own. Our once tight-knit friend group was stunned. I got calls from two of our close friends expressing their shock and support, saying they had no idea. Apparently, Lauren and Eric had fooled everyone. If either of them had any standing in our community, it was all but destroyed now. Neither showed their faces at the usual school events or neighborhood gatherings after that. A week later, I got a text from Michelle asking if we could talk. We met up at a coffee shop one afternoon. She looked drawn and weary, but gave me a sad smile as I sat down across from her. "How are you holding up?" I asked quietly. She shrugged, eyes red as if she'd been crying often. "I've been better, obviously, but I'll survive. The kids are with my sister for now, thank God." She paused, picking at the lid of her coffee. "Mark, I just wanted to thank you for telling me the truth. As awful as that night was, I'd rather know than live in ignorance." Her voice wavered, and I could see tears gathering. I reached out and briefly touched her hand in a gesture of solidarity. "You didn't deserve what happened. None of us did. I'm so sorry that you and your kids got hurt in all this." She blinked back tears and nodded. "Eric is begging for another chance, but there's no coming back from this for me. I told him to lawyer up because I won't stay married to a cheater." A flash of anger crossed her face. He had the nerve to blame Lauren, like she seduced him or something. "Pathetic," I huffed. "They're both to blame. In my mind, they deserve each other." I hesitated, then added softly, "Not that I think it'll last. Honestly, I doubt they'll even stay together now that everything's out in the open." Michelle gave a brittle laugh. Oh, I'm sure you're right. Cowards like that always turn on each other. She squeezed my hand. We'll get through this, right? Both of us. Yeah, I agreed. We will. As I walked her to her car, I realized that though we were both scarred by what happened, we were also freer in a way, free from living a lie. It was small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. In the ensuing weeks, legal proceedings moved swiftly. Lauren, perhaps advised by her own lawyer and cowed by the evidence I had, did not contest the divorce. In fact, she signed the papers in an out-of-court settlement without a fight. Even her own parents were appalled by her behavior. Her father called me personally to apologize, saying he was ashamed and that I'd always be like family to them. I thanked him, though nothing could really heal that wound. Knowing they supported me in doing what was necessary made it a little easier. Our prenup certainly helped speed things along. An infidelity clause we'd included back when I first started my company ensured she would waive any claim to spousal support if she cheated. At the time, we both laughed it off as a formality we'd never need. Funny how life works out. In the end, she left with her personal savings and belongings. But I kept the house and the bulk of my assets. More importantly, I secured primary custody of Ethan. She knew better than to challenge me on that. I think deep down she agreed he should stay in the home with me, at least for now. She gets visitation rights every other weekend, and a weekly dinner with him, which I tolerate for Ethan's sake. I want him to have a relationship with his mother, despite everything, but on my terms and with healthy boundaries. The first time I saw Lauren after the dust settled was a month later, when she came by to pick up Ethan for an outing. I watched from the doorway as our son ran to her excitedly. He missed her, of course. Lauren looked different. There was a fragility about her, as if the weight of what she'd done had physically diminished her confident glow. She caught my eye with a timid, sad gaze and offered a quiet, "Hello." I nodded politely but kept my distance. We made small talk about Ethan's school and his soccer practice schedule. She thanked me for letting her take him to the zoo that day. The exchange was civil but painfully formal. Two people who once shared a bed, now reduced to awkward cordiality. When they returned later, she lingered a moment as Ethan ran inside to show me a stuffed animal he'd gotten. "Mark," she said softly. I waited. I want you to know, I am so sorry. For everything. I know I can't undo it. I just hope one day you might find it in you to forgive me, at least as a co-parent. I was silent for a beat, then simply said, "Take care, Lauren." I closed the door, watching through the window as she walked back to her car, shoulders slumped, wiping at her eyes. In that moment, I felt no triumph, no joy, only a bittersweet relief. I didn't enjoy seeing her in pain, but it was the bed she made. And the truth was, I'd already begun to move past her. These days, life is simpler, if not exactly how I once envisioned. I throw myself into my work and into being the best father I can. It's not always easy. Single parenthood never is. But our home is peaceful. I've rebuilt routines for Ethan and me. Pancakes on Saturday mornings. Games of catch in the backyard after I log off work. He's young enough that he's adapted, though he does ask about Mommy sometimes, usually after her visits. I tell him Mommy loves him, but made some mistakes that meant we can't all live together right now. It seems to satisfy him, at least until he's old enough to understand more. And when that day comes, I'll be honest with him, gently. As for me, I'm doing all right. Some nights, after I put Ethan to bed, I sit on the back patio with a beer and gaze up at the stars, reflecting on how dramatically life can change. Sometimes I replay memories of our years together, searching for clues I missed or wondering if my own shortcomings drove her away. I know I wasn't a perfect husband. Work kept me away on too many evenings, and I'm sure I took her for granted on occasion. But I was faithful, and I loved her in every way I knew how. Whatever problems we had, she chose the most hurtful way imaginable to handle them. That was her decision, not my failure. A few months ago, I was a husband with a predictable future. Now I'm a divorced single dad, with a heart that's a little harder and a lot wiser. I won't say I've become jaded. I still believe in love and loyalty, but I'll be much more careful with whom I trust those things. Maybe someday I'll meet someone new, someone who values honesty as much as I do. If and when that happens, I'll be entering that chapter of my life with eyes wide open. For now, I am at peace with the choice I made. I stood up for myself in the face of betrayal and protected my family in the way I saw best. In doing so, I reclaimed my self-respect. Lauren and Eric paid the price for their actions, the loss of their marriages, their friendships, and the respect of those around them. Consequences they earned 100 times over. I don't know if they're still in contact with each other. I heard a rumor that they tried to continue their relationship openly for a short while after the dust settled, but it fizzled out quickly once real life and guilt set in. In the end, they couldn't even rely on each other. All they have now are the ashes of their choices. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't have to define you. I was knocked down hard, but I got back up on my terms. I'm moving forward, one steady step at a time, my head held high. And every day, when I make breakfast for my son or help him with his homework at the kitchen table, I'm reminded that there are still things in this world that are good and pure and worth fighting for. Those are the things that kept me going, and that's where I'll build the rest of our lives. In the quiet of our home at night, after I've checked that the doors are locked and peeked in on Ethan sleeping soundly, I sometimes catch my reflection in the hallway mirror. I see a man who has been through hell and back, a man who nearly lost everything that mattered. But I also see a man who refused to be anyone's fool. I lost a lot in this ordeal, my partner, my illusions, but I didn't lose myself. In a way, I rediscovered my own worth. I won't lie. The journey hurt like hell, but in the end, I made sure the people who betrayed me faced the fallout, and I walked away with my dignity intact, and my family, what remains of it, safe. I can live with that. That, I've learned, is what victory looks like in the aftermath of betrayal. It's not a jubilant, trumpets blaring triumph. It's the quiet satisfaction of knowing that truth won out, that the guilty were held to account, and that I have the strength to start over. And start over I will, a little wiser, a little tougher, but no longer living a lie. In the story of my life, this was the chapter where I was tested and prevailed. And as I close this chapter, I'm determined to make the next one about hope, honesty, and healing. I've already taken small steps in that direction. I booked a road trip for Ethan and me along the coast this summer, just father and son exploring new places and making new memories. It's something positive for us to look forward to, a reminder that life has good chapters ahead. That is the future I'm fighting for, and I won't settle for anything less.